Hello and welcome to episode 117 of Communicast, the podcast dedicated to enhancing communication skills. I'm your host, Scott D'Amico, president of Communispond. Today I'm joined by Sam Alvita, career strategist and founder of Work Rewritten. Sam helps individuals navigate career transitions and rethink how they approach growth in today's rapidly evolving world of work. In this episode, Sam and I explore how the traditional career ladder is breaking down and what it means to build a more dynamic, flexible career web. We talk about why great communicators are great connectors, how asking better questions can dramatically improve your relationships and opportunities, and why presence and curiosity are becoming essential skills for career success. This conversation is packed with actionable ideas for anyone looking to stand out, build stronger connections, and take control of their career path in a changing world. Let's dive in. Sam, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Scott. Very excited to be here.
Excited for the conversation as well. To kick things off, please tell the listeners just a little bit about you and the great work that you're doing today.
I run a career strategy company called Work Rewritten, and it's based on the premise that the world of work is changing a lot. People are using old assumptions to navigate that changing world of work with some success and some not so great outcomes. So I want to be a resource that provides the most high quality, up to date information for anyone who is going through a career change or a career transition, especially as, again, we move into this future world of work that is going to look very different than it does currently. So that is the very high level of what I do and kind of how I'm doing it.
Perfect. Now, what brought you into that line of work, or what drew you specifically to that to help really people focus on strategy with regards to their career?
Yeah, so I have been in kind of a hybrid version of the education world and the media world for a very long time. So on the education side of things, it's so clear that there are so many people with so much potential and ideally a lot of untapped potential. And so I think anyone who's worked with students or anyone in that kind of capacity will realize that there's a lot that's being left on the table. And so I think from the very start of my career, I wanted to be able to unlock that potential in whatever capacity. And I know that sounds more life coachy than I want it to, but it's very much in the space of like, what specific resources, advice, tools, strategy do they need to be able to fulfill that potential in whatever way? And then on the other side of things, I've been in the media space. So worked at a number of different companies, including Masterclass, IDEO. And on that side, I do a lot of writing, a lot of different building of frameworks, a lot of different, like, how do you really create the resources that people need? So merging these two worlds together was what created what is now Work Rewritten and the basis of my company.
We were definitely speaking my language. I started my career as a high school teacher, prior to then switching gears a little bit and working in an adult focused university for a little over a decade. So I absolutely understand where you're coming from, right? There's so much potential out there, and people aren't, I think, one, necessarily aware of what they could do, need to do, should do, what tools are out there. And the systems, I think, sometimes because of regulation and bureaucracy are so slow to kind of get those gears rolling to keep pace with, especially today, with how quickly things are changing. So that's interesting dynamic of kind of that education background combined with the learning, training, understanding kind of what's going on in this world of work today. So I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you know exactly where I'm coming from, and yes, so much potential in that space.
So as we think about navigating careers, and especially in light of all the change going on today with AI and changes in technology, dramatic shifts in the way that we work, technology aside, right? People working from home, people working mixed, blended environments, full time in an office. There's a lot going on in the world of work. For me, one of the connecting threads for success is and always has been, I think always will be, effective communication. So as you think about that, when with the work that you're doing, working with people to help them navigate their career to stand out, some of the work that you're doing, perhaps maybe on the learning side of the house, when you run into somebody and you're like, oh wow, that person's a really good communicator, or man, they have great communication skills. What's the image that comes to mind when you encounter that or you hear that phrase?
Yeah, so I love this question. I feel like it's one that my answer has changed as my career has evolved. So I think earlier on in my career, I would think about great communication as how well someone gives information to another person and how understandable that information is to that person. And I think that's really evolved to being like how well a communicator or someone can connect with someone else. So I think the best communicators are the best connectors. And what I see a lot with really, really fantastic communicators are the people who can ask questions really well, ask the correct questions, really seek to understand the person that they're talking to and where that person is coming from and respond to that answer instead of just a one way, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm doing it. And I've had the privilege of working under a number of different leaders who are those really fantastic connectors. And it's just so stark to me to see how well their communication lands compared to maybe a leader who is really focused on themselves and how their message is coming across.
You bring up a great nuance there of typically great communicators are right the ones that people see up on stage. They're a great orator. They're very comfortable delivering a presentation, and they can perhaps connect with people, or their message will resonate with an audience. But I think to sustain that and to I think have career longevity and to really grow, and I think specifically inside of an organization, I'll separate the two a little bit. Maybe a really good public speaker versus somebody that is really doing well within their career, growing, whether that means taking on more responsibilities, learning new things, getting promotion. Everyone has a different journey when it comes to growth. But as you mentioned, it's the people that really can ask questions, they can be present, they can understand the other person's point of view, and then in turn figure out, how do I formulate my message based on what I just heard, right? It's not just all about me and my message. It's really ultimately about it's about Sam and what's going on with her and what's driving her. What are the motivations? So I can kind of tweak and tailor my message as I go forward.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think it's such a rare thing these days to be in a conversation where you feel like someone has 100% of your attention and vice versa. And I think there's a real gift in that kind of communication and what can come from that.
Yeah, there's that old adage. It's kind of cheesy, but presence is a present. It really is a gift to be present with somebody. I can tell you they sense it. Something as simple as taking your phone, putting it down when you're talking with somebody. Even if you're not looking at it, if you're holding it or if it's face up, putting it down, face down, away from you, kind of turning towards that person, giving them your full attention, they will pick up on that. They're going to sense that. They're going to be much more open to what they're going to share with you and ultimately value that interaction a lot more.
Yes, exactly. Very valuable.
Sam, as you think of the world of work today, you talked earlier about, there's a lot of people maybe operating under old assumptions as to how things are happening, what's going to help them stand out, or what's going to land them a job or grow in their career. So if you think about it today, really, what are the key things that people should be focusing on that maybe are stepping away from some of those old assumptions?
Yeah, so there are a number of different things that I work with my clients on and write about. One really key one that comes up a lot is a lot of us, when we were told to think about our careers, we were thinking about it in a very linear way. So, for example, you go to get whatever training, whatever university degree, you pursue that degree, you get that degree, and then there's a relatively linear progression that happens from that point through retirement. And in maybe a more traditional corporate space, it would look like you come in as an individual contributor, you become a manager, director, senior director, eventually maybe run the company. You get the idea. And I think that assumption is still driving a lot of the choices that people are making today. So whether that is how they position their resume, how they talk about their experience, how they think about their value as it pertains to the job market, it's in a very linear way. And more, that linear structure is just breaking down. So people are experiencing layoffs. There's not the same stability in many career paths as there was before. Some of these university degrees are not delivering in the same way that they promised that they would. And I think there's a lot of people that are really struggling with that, completely understandably. But then there's also a way to kind of flip this model on its head where it's like, if the system is not linear anymore, then what is it? And how do we, as professionals in that market, take advantage of the new system as it exists now? And so, how I generally describe that is in terms of a web. So, it's like instead of progressing along one path, you're going to be gaining different skills, connections, different projects, and building out a very, ideally, very broad web system that allows anyone who's pursuing work like that to take advantage of the many different projects, opportunities, roles that come up. And I've noticed with clients who are able to really embrace that model, they usually end up further along than they might have originally been if they'd been following that traditional ladder. So I would say that is really the basic premise of how to think about work today, but there's many different nuances that come into that and strategies that go alongside that.
So it's this transition from the traditional career ladder. I get my degree, I get in the door, I move up my rungs, maybe I go back and get a graduate degree. I ultimately maybe I hit the C suite, I hit the top. Then I think probably maybe a decade-ish ago, we started to see more of the career lattice where maybe I go up a rung or two, then up, man, I'm going to shift over here into marketing and learn a little bit more. Then I'm going to go back this way and then up. And maybe I take a step back because it's a really interesting opportunity to gain my experience. And now, what I had historically called maybe the career jungle gym, where you are moving all over the place, very similar to this web. I think the really critical part that you pointed out when it comes to this career web is the connections. If you think of, say, a spider web, right? The reason that it is structurally sound is all the connections that are made on every single layer. And going back to what we talked about earlier, really effective communicators and successful people are great at connecting with others and knowing that, what, this connection is important now, and it may be also very important later where I experience a layoff or I'm caught up in a restructure, a reduction in force, and I've stayed in touch, I've learned, and I've added value. So then you can start to pull on all those connections and move around that web during those times of transition.
Yes, absolutely. And I think those connections can look, to your point, so many different ways, ranging from maybe past colleagues, but past classmates, past people in your community, past volunteer gigs, whatever it is. I think there's so many opportunities for really deep connections that support that web.
And one of the things I talked about on a recent episode was this idea that don't be afraid to ask. You've made these connections throughout your life. I'm still very close with people that I went to high school with, to college with, from my teaching career, from my time at the university, people that I've worked with on and off over the past 8 or so years at my current employer, people that I've met on this show. Don't be afraid to ask if there maybe is a way where you could work together or collaborate or maybe get an introduction or something. I will say more often than not, overwhelmingly more often than not, people are excited to help out. And that's a big thing that people miss out a lot on their careers. And I think fully leveraging their network because oftentimes they're either shy or embarrassed or just they don't want to ask. I think really getting out there and being able to ask is critical.
Yes, I could not agree more. And this is something that comes up a lot with my younger clients or my clients that are still in university, where we talk about networking, less like networking and more like connecting. So I'm always like, throw out this idea of this very transactional networking relationship where you ask for something and that person gives you that thing. I think especially for those younger professionals who haven't had a lot of experience, it does feel very much like they don't always think that they have something to give to the person and therefore they don't ask. But then when they reframe it and approach it as a connection, so it's like, what can you learn from this person? How might you serve this person even through your attention, your curiosity, your potential network in the future? I think it really opens up the potential for those people and kind of how they can approach this and have it feel much less transactional and less, frankly, gross is the term they use a lot. And yeah, I mean, I get it, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think networking as connecting is a very important reframe.
Absolutely. And I will say I felt very old a couple of weeks ago when I got a LinkedIn request from one of my son's friends in high school. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm at the point now where my kids are connecting with me on LinkedIn. But at the same time, I was excited that he took the initiative to find people in his network to make that connection. And once again, maybe he's learning things from what I'm posting. Maybe it someday we'll cross paths as he gets out of school. But it was humbling and exciting to see that at the same time.
Yeah, totally get that. And I love that he's connecting with you on LinkedIn. It's great sign.
Sam, as you think about your career and the success that you've had, if I were to ask someone close to you and maybe say, what's the key communication skill that has really helped Sam get to where she is today? What might they share with me?
Yeah, I think there's two things. One is my honesty and authenticity. I think when I work with clients, I really want to make sure that I'm being kind always, but also direct. So if someone is in a situation where I'm helping them with their strategy, they want an honest take on that and to have a really clear sense of what's happening. So I think I approach this kind but direct line well. And then I think the other piece is like I do really genuinely love connecting with people, and I think I am a strong connector as it comes to learning and experiencing, I don't know, curiosity and really engaging moments with a lot of different types of people. It's something that I love doing in my work, but also I think is a strength of mine as well.
One thing that people often confuse or conflate, or whatever the word may be, is being direct with being mean. And for me, it's the farthest thing from the truth. When you are honest and direct with people, that's one of the most kind things that you can do. Now, the distinction often is how that message is delivered. It's not necessarily the words. I think it's how it's delivered and the context in which you deliver. Can you maybe talk a little bit about how do you maintain that level of kindness as you're also being very open and honest and direct with people?
Yeah, so I think in a coaching relationship, it's an interesting balance because I don't want to be passing judgment. Everyone's experience is so different. They have expertise I do not always have, and I want to make sure I really honor that. But then also when I see a strategy, so take for example, someone who's like, I don't like networking, I'm not going to do it. It's something that feels gross to me. I have no interest. That I can then be in a conversation being like, how might we think about this differently? Because it is something, regardless of how you're feeling about it, is going to be super important and super central. And how do we make it feel good to you, but also acknowledge that it does need to happen and not letting this pass. Like, okay, great, you don't like it. You don't have to do it. That's fine. And I think, especially when we get into deeper strategic moves on the career side, everyone's learning, right? And we're all kind of adapting to this changing world of work. So I am very direct of like, that strategy probably won't serve you in the way that you may think it will, or maybe you didn't come across in the way you thought you did to that person. How can we pivot in the future to make sure that it's all your interactions are really serving you, your strategies are really serving you? And so, yeah, I think it really depends on the situation, but fighting that urge to lean into my own comfort of like, well, it's easier for me to just agree with them and let them carry this as they will. And to be direct, give the feedback that needs to be given and make sure that they feel supported in that way as well.
And it goes back to what we talked about earlier with understanding that other person. Sam, you mentioned that you don't want to do networking, that it feels gross to you, and whatever it may be, whatever their scenario may be. But really going back and say, okay, well, one, as you said, how can we think about this a different way? But then also, tell me a little bit more. Why do you think that? And to the beginning, right? Maybe they're operating under these outdated assumptions as to going to a networking event, grabbing as many business cards from people as you can. Once again, aging and dating myself with business cards a little bit, but getting all the business cards and then boom, hitting people with a sales pitch, right? Trying to get something immediately from them. So yeah, I think understanding that other person to say, okay, well, why is it? Why are you having that feelings, or why do you have this perspective on it? Then is there a way that we can do this where ultimately you are comfortable with doing it, taking a different approach with it?
Yes, exactly. And I think this adaptability piece of, okay, this is where you're coming into the situation, this is how you're thinking about something, but we are going to need to adapt to be successful in the future. So, what does that adaptability look like in a way that is authentic to you and also allows us to move forward with a lot of success? That's the key here. So, um, yes, very important.
So earlier in our conversation, you had mentioned you had the opportunity to work with some folks who were really great communicators, people that really connected and understood that aspect of communication. So as you reflect back, and maybe it's one of these leaders, somebody else from throughout your career or throughout your life, who has been somebody that's had an impact on your communication style? And it might just be simply something you've taken from them and tweaked and made your own, but who's had an impact on kind of the way that you communicate or some of the tools that you use?
Yeah, so I think there are two people that come to mind in two very different categories who have had a massive impact on my communication style. The first was a previous manager I had at the design firm IDEO. Her name was Colita Stafford, but she led our entire section of IDEO, and she was the first manager that I ever had that would open a meeting and with such genuine curiosity about whatever the topic was, and then would facilitate that meeting in a way to get as much information as possible for herself. So it was like, oh, we're doing this new project. What do I need to know about this? How can we collect as much information about it? How can we do all these different things? It'd be an extremely generative communication space. And then at the end of that meeting, she would share her perspective. So, like, great leaders speak last, I think, is an adage that was very much lived out in that space. And I think it made our team extremely effective because everyone could be heard, everyone's ideas were out. She wasn't driving the conversation in any way that wasn't serving the group as a whole, and then of course would able apply her own expertise and her leadership at the end, so it wasn't like her voice was absent, but was extremely valuable. So she's one, and then the second one is a producer in the documentary film space who I've worked with at masterclass before, and her name is Inez Novakic Roast, and she does a lot of different documentaries for Hulu, a lot of things for Masterclass. But she's one of the people who interviews the talent on camera, and she's also a person that can walk into a room with anyone from anywhere, people with like vastly different life experiences than hers, and can sit in front of them in this kind of stressful environment where the cameras and the lights and everything's going, and just talk to them in such a way that they feel super comfortable, and she's able to get really rich insights out of them because she's meeting them exactly where they are, listening really well, and asking really fantastic questions to build on that experience. And I think one, we were doing a project with the Navy SEALs this summer, and so she and I have no life experience similar to the Navy SEALs, but I was watching her with one of the very high ranking members, really like kind of break him down in a way, not break him down in a bad way, but in a way that he was really comfortable sharing these really intense, deep experiences he went through with someone he didn't really know because of her question asking ability and her ability to really celebrate the person she's talking to. So I think those are the two people that come to mind, and two people that I'm really trying to emulate in different ways as I move forward with my own work.
And I'm willing to bet with the producer that you were talking about is there is a tremendous amount of preparation that goes into that. Yeah, I'm sure some people just have a natural ability, I think, to get people, or an ability that's been honed over time to get them to open up. But I'm sure going into these scenarios, so much preparation was done, and which is often overlooked when it comes to communication, to be able to relate to people, ask insightful and thoughtful questions and to get them to break it down in a way that everyone's going to understand. There's likely so much behind the scenes that people aren't seeing that happens that goes into that.
Yes, and I think that's an extremely important call out that she did such in-depth preparation, and especially when she's about to talk to someone about something that may be more challenging to them, or a story that they may not feel great about whatever happened in that story, to really understand kind of the premise of it, where they might have been coming from, what might help them as they talk about this thing, and help them really come fully to the table without judgment or without feeling like they're sharing to an audience that's not receptive.
And I would also say for the folks listening to this, if you are a leader, and this goes back to your first example, the former colleague from IDEO, if you're going into a meetings and saying, okay, we have this project coming up, here's what I think, what do you all think? You're doing yourself a tremendous disservice versus taking the approach that your colleague would take, was getting people's feedback, allowing them to share, to really get their true thoughts, and then sharing your perspective. Really flipping that, you're going to get much more open, honest feedback from people versus, more often than not, even if you've created, I think, a safe space and a safe culture, you're going to get a lot of people that are likely going to agree with the boss, more so if they didn't necessarily know your position going into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sam, as we are wrapping up here, two questions. You can handle them in any order that you want. First is, what piece of closing advice would you have for people listening to this around the importance of developing the skills we talked about today? And then if people want to get in touch and learn more about the great work that you do, what's the best way for them to do that? And I'll make sure I include it in the show notes.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'd say the advice that I would leave everyone with is to do some research about what great question asking looks like. There's a lot of really fantastic resources online for how to do this. Again, quick search, you'll get every bit of information you need. But what types of questions lead to the connection you're seeking, the type of leadership you're seeking, how you can convey genuine curiosity through your question asking. I think to really study this as, frankly, an art form or a craft has really helped me tremendously in the work that I do, both with clients in the moment, but also just out in the world, and how I'm networking, how I'm interacting with people, how I'm approaching my own life. I think it's really been a transformational thing to do some just even basic research on this. It's great. And then your second question about where they can find me, you can find me at byworkrewritten.com if you want my website, but also on Substack and Instagram are the two platforms I'm the most active on, and then Sam Alvita on LinkedIn. And yeah, I hope that any resources that I share would be helpful, and yes, hopefully can help anyone move forward in their careers as we all approach this new world of work.
Absolutely. I'll be sure to put all of those links down there in the show notes so people can find you, and completely agree with the point about asking questions. It is a great way to differentiate yourself, to make stronger connections with people, and ultimately, I think, to understand how to best communicate your message to that person. So whether going from a very transactional person of, how was it? How did you like it? To, oh, really, what drew you to that? What was it that attracted you to doing that? You'll notice the type of information you get back and the connections that you make are going to be so much stronger.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Sam, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Scott. You as well.
Special thanks again to my guest, Sam Alvita, for joining us and sharing such valuable insights on communication, connection, and navigating the modern world of work. As we close, here's a takeaway from our conversation. Great communicators aren't just focused on delivering their message, they're focused on understanding others. They ask thoughtful questions, stay present, and build genuine connections that create opportunity over time. In a world where careers are no longer linear, your ability to connect, adapt, and communicate with intention is what will set you apart. Be sure to subscribe to Communicast so you don't miss future episodes with leaders, coaches, and experts redefining what great communication looks like. And if this episode resonated with you, please leave a rating or review. It helps others discover the show and supports our growing community. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.